I drive home late most nights. That part of the city goes quiet after midnight. You stop noticing things. That's the problem. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special. I'd been at work until midnight, finishing something that could have waited. I just wanted to get home. I was about 15 minutes from home when I noticed there was a car behind me, which is normal. Roads aren't empty. I turned off the main road onto a back street I use sometimes. Cuts off 5 minutes. I take it maybe once a week. The headlights turned with me. I told myself it was nothing. A neighbor. Someone heading the same direction. It's a through road. Anyone could use it. I took another turn. This one I didn't need to take. I wanted to see if they'd follow. They did. 3 turns. All off my normal route. All followed. My hands went cold before my brain caught up with what I was feeling. I thought about calling someone. I couldn't think of what I'd say. I think a car is following me. That sounds like nothing. That sounds like paranoia. I sped up. Not enough to be obvious. Just enough to create some distance. They sped up too. I wasn't going to lead whoever this was back to my house. That thought hit me hard and fast. I turned again. Then again. I was driving in a loop through streets I barely knew. They kept pace. Never close enough to feel like an immediate threat. Never far enough to give me hope they'd gone. I pulled into a 24-hour petrol station car park. Left the engine running. Watched in the mirror. They stopped at the entrance. Just outside the light. They didn't come in. They didn't leave. They sat there with the engine running and waited. I called a friend. No answer. Called my brother. Voicemail. It was past 1 in the morning. Everyone was asleep. I sat in that car park for 8 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. I was trying to think. I couldn't think. I just kept checking the mirror. They were still there. 8 minutes, and they hadn't moved an inch. I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep sitting there. I pulled out, and I drove directly to the nearest police station. I knew where one was. I'd driven past it 100 times. I drove fast, but careful. I didn't want to get pulled over. That sounds absurd in hindsight. I was driving to a police station, and I was worried about getting a traffic fine. They followed. The whole way. Every turn. Every change of speed. They stayed 3 or 4 car lengths back the entire time. Close enough to see me. Far enough to not be obvious. When the police station came into view, I felt something release in my chest. I pulled into the car park and killed the engine. I waited to see where they'd go. They parked across the street, on a yellow line, directly opposite the entrance. Engine still running. No one got out. I went inside and told the officer at the desk what had happened. I could hear myself saying it, and I could hear how it sounded. A car drove behind me. I took some wrong turns. A car drove behind me. The officer came outside with me. We looked across the street. The car was still there. He radioed something, and 2 officers walked toward it. Before they reached it, the car drove off. Slow, no rush. The officers took my statement, asked me to describe the car. Dark color, I said. Sedan. I didn't get the plates. I was too scared to try. The station had cameras covering the street. They pulled the footage. The car had been there for 6 minutes. 6 minutes parked outside a police station at 1 a.m. They got a partial plate from the CCTV. Ran it. Called me the next morning with the result. The plates were stolen. Taken from a car parked at a shopping center 2 weeks earlier. The car itself was never found. I went home that night with a police escort. They waited outside until I was inside with the door locked. I checked every room. Everything was where I left it. Nothing wrong. I stood in the hallway for a long time, just listening. I couldn't sleep. I sat up until 5 in the morning with every light on. I kept finding reasons to check the windows. At some point, I thought about it from a different angle. Someone had been watching that window. Someone had known which car was mine. Someone had been waiting for me to leave. They hadn't followed me from work. I'd checked my mirrors leaving the car park, and the road was empty. They were already in my neighborhood, waiting, which means they knew where I lived, which means they'd been there before. I changed my routine for 2 months. Different routes, different times, different car parks. I told myself I was being cautious. I think I was being frightened. The police never found the car, never found out who was in it. The file was still open when I asked about it 8 months later. They weren't hopeful. The thing that stays with me isn't the night itself. It's what came before it. The waiting, the knowing. Whoever was in that car had been watching me long enough to know when I'd be leaving, long enough to be ready. I still drive home late sometimes. You have to eventually. You can't let it stop you living. But I check my mirrors more than I used to. Every time a car makes the same turn as me, I count the turns. 1, 2, 3. There's no resolution to this. No arrest, no name, no answer to the question I've been sitting with for 2 years. Why me? Why that night? Why did they stop? Or did they? I don't know who was in that car. I don't know what they wanted. I just know that somewhere out there is someone who watched me long enough to learn my routine. And I never found out why.